I am joined here today by Perry White, the co-owner and host of On the Yard Network. Perry, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us.
Man, good to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So you're a Southern alum. You've been following this team for a long time. I don't think I'm far off saying this comeback win against Prairie View has been one of the most resilient performances in recent memory. What adjustments did you see the Jags make to pull off that comeback, and what does that mean for them moving forward?
I think what you saw with Southern, the issue was coming into this game with Prairie View was offensive line. The week before at Jackson State, you saw Jackson's D-line really have their way with Southern's offensive line. And so Southern making the adjustment, being able to rotate guys, and being able to commit to the run. I mean, when you look at the quarterback situation between Noah Biden and then you look at Xavier and T-Set, you're trying to find a guy that'll be able to put some points on the board and get this offense going under first-year offensive coordinator Mark Frederick. So being able to make those adjustments with the offensive line and then being able to have that run game, which ultimately won the game with Kendrick Grimes at that touchdown in overtime, I thought that was good. And then coming out of halftime, Southern goes down 14-3 at halftime and then come back, scored directly on that first possession coming in that second half. But staying resilient, not giving up, I think that was key for this team. And the adjustments by the coaches, especially on the road in the SWAC.
Yeah, I was just about to mention the offensive line. It's been no secret that's been the weakest point of this team. And like you said, they bounced back in the second half against Prairie View A&M. Do you feel like that's kind of what's going to happen moving forward? They're going to be more consistent, or do you feel like they're still going to hold back this offense and be the Achilles heel? You
know, I'm not quite sure. This is one of those, with a first-year head coach in Terrence Graves, you just have to watch and see. This is one of those situations where you got to let a team gel. You got to let the chemistry come. You got a lot of guys who transferred into the program. That offensive line has to get that experience. And anybody in football, when you know the game is won in the trenches, and for Southern, that needs experience in the trenches, particularly on the offensive line. And with the next game, there's a bye week coming at a great time, but with that next game against Nicholls, who has been a perennial power in the Southland Conference and FCS football, you know, they're going to have to really step it up because that game is not – Nicholls is no slouch, you know, at all. And so having an in-state team with in-state guys of two programs from the state of Louisiana on the same level, this team is going to have to figure it out. And I think that step we saw at Prairie View as they get ready to get into, as they say, the meat of the schedule and the SWAC.
Exactly. This is their last non-conference game. But before we start talking about especially the quarterback position, I do got to ask you, Coach Graves and this new coaching staff, do you feel like they are the answer? Have you been impressed with them? And do you feel like it's an upgrade from the Dooley era?
Well, you know, this staff is pretty much the same staff that was in place when Coach Dooley was here. Terrence Graves, who was the special teams coordinator, got elevated up to head coach. You look around with Henry Miller at defensive coordinator. Southern's defense has pretty much been its strength for the past going on 3 years now. And now I think what the problem was, a lot of people had the issues with Coach Dooley being the offensive coordinator and not really using the roster that I think a lot of people wanted to see, particularly at the quarterback position. But now you put Terrence Graves, and Terrence Graves knows Southern. He's been around Southern's program for a long time, dating back to the 90s of the Pete Richardson era. And so when you look at these guys, you have a lot of experience. You look at Willie Titan, who's the quarterback's coach. You look at Fred McNair, who's the tight ends coach. Both those guys are former head coaches in this league. And all the way around, when you look at the experience of the guys that are the position coaches as well as the coordinators, these guys, you think if time continues to pass, and if that experience that these guys have, you would think to see success simply because these guys understand what winning means to the Jaguar Nation at Southern.
Exactly. We can sit here all day and talk about the defense. But Mark Frederick, what do you think about his offense?
Mark Frederick's a guy who came into this program from Prairie View last year. Of course, Prairie View won the West, went to the SWAC championship to take on Florida A&M. It's a work in progress. This is a situation in which Coach Dooley was not only the head coach, but he was the offensive coordinator. And so Coach Frederick's coming in his first year at Southern, having to find his way with what's going to be successful. And the best time to try to work on those things are doing that non-conference schedule. You had McNeese, you had Jackson State, Savannah State, and then you get into that conference schedule with Prairie View. Still trying to figure things out in this early part of the season in September. But this is the part where you hope that they finally do get it together once you get into the heart of it. September, leaving into October and November, because guess what? That's where championships are won and headed to once you get your team together. And you're looking to see, can Mark Fredericks find the guy? And I think that guy is finding consistency and Noah Biden in the situation that he's in now, and then hoping you can get Xavier and T-Set back with his health. A local kid from Scotlandville, dual threat quarterback, and I think for the Jaguar Nation, a lot of people who have seen him and his skill set, the sky's the limit for the freshman red shirt in terms of what he can have in terms of success at Southern.
Absolutely. I was just about to mention that. T said his ankle injury, his status is still up in the air. He has an extra week to rest. Safety's ready against Nicholls. You still stick with Noah after that comeback win, right?
I think right now, yeah, just because you want to kind of take a chill pill with T-Set. You know, the idea is the conference schedule, but nonetheless, you want to win those games that are non-conference. You want to win every game on the schedule. The whole idea is to go 1-0 each week, and so I think with Noah being resilient the way that he was, and then let's look at that two-point conversion that they were able to get. He was getting tackled, sacked on the play, and was able to get it out and find Quay Davis right there to keep Southern in that game. The resilience of Noah Biden, the experience of the guy, I think right now you stick with him until otherwise.
Do you feel like he's the answer? Because there's no question about it. He has a turnover issue. I believe it's 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles on the season. Do you feel like he's the answer moving forward for the Jags? Do you think they could win games heading into conference play after Nicholls?
I think they can, and I look at the fact that, one of the biggest things with Noah Biden that I've noticed is his progression in the game of being able to watch and keep his eyes down the field. He has not quite done a good job of releasing the deep ball to the guys when they're across the field and open. He typically finds himself in a scramble situation, running into the tackle. I think he has to relax and let the game come to him and not overthink the game. And currently it seems like he may be doing a little bit doing too much thinking in the process, and it's causing him to be in tough positions. And so if Noah can find himself to relax and be able to let the game come to him and not overanalyze it, I think Noah Biden could be successful in the games ahead for Southern.
Yeah, Noah has showed promise. Like you said, that 2-point conversion play was insane. Getting hit and staying calm in the pocket. But let's go on to Southern's defense. Like I said, we can talk about them all day, but I do want to talk about the secondary. No one this season has threw on them for over 200 yards. What players in that secondary have really stood out to you and have really stood out to you?
I like Horatio Johnson, and unfortunately he was not available against Prairie View, but he's a guy I think as a leader of that secondary. And this secondary, I think when you look at the defense, was going to be the question mark this year. Would they be able to find success? And we've seen it. Unfortunately, I've seen a few pick six that they've had in their possession, but the DBs just not being able to come down with it. But they have done their part in terms of being locked down. We saw against Jackson State at times they let receivers get by them. But I think the main thing is working on tackling. That's the beauty of having a bye week. You get to work on the fundamental things and the small things, and when you go back and review film, I think that'll probably be the main thing that they see on film for that secondary. Being able to make the tackles when you one-on-one with receivers out in space and being able to stop those drives of opposing offenses, because we saw it against Jackson State accordingly that were third down drives that the secondary could have put a stop to, but not making those tackles and allowing those receivers to extend those plays ultimately kept those other offense on the field. And you kind of wear your defense down when you don't make those stops.
You can't talk about Southern's defense without mentioning Kelby Givens. Only 1 sack on the season, but he's still wrecking havoc, bunch of tackles for losses. How important is he to the success of the Jaguars' defense?
I mean, Kelby Givens is everything. I mean, anybody I think in this league would want to have them on their team. He's a leader. He's a smart guy. He's a guy that I think when you look for on the sideline, somebody to corral the team back and get them, even in down situations as we saw at Prairie View, he's a guy that's consistent. And for me, I think he's everything that Southern wanted. I'm proud to have him as a Jaguar and proud to see him out there being able to find a success. And I think as long as he continues to do the things that he's doing, and that's being a leader on and off the field, I think Southern will be in a good position, especially defensively.
Lastly, I got to ask you about Nicholls. They have a bye week to prepare for him. They showed that they could even hang with LSU. What are the keys to victory for the Jags against the Colonels?
First thing is the run with Nicholls. I mean, Nicholls just beat Mississippi Valley, a member of the SWAC, 66-0 down in Thibodaux this past weekend. So the Jags are going to have their hands full. Although Nicholls came into that game with Valley 0-3, you saw promise in their early scheduling on the season that this team is no slouch. They're picked to be heavily favorites in the Southland Conference. And then Coach Rebo, what he does well is recruit the state of Louisiana, particularly South Louisiana. And people in Louisiana know about the river parishes and the New Orleans area. And they develop players really well. And for Southern's going to have to get in and be able, on their run defense, stop the run and offensively keep drives alive. And it goes back to that offensive line. It takes the run to set up the pass, and that run game will help Noah Biden kind of settle down and be a little bit more comfortable back in the pocket, where the game doesn't have to be won and lost in his arm, but he just has to do his part in terms of getting the ball to the playmakers. But Southern has a running back room when you look at Kendrick Grimes and Kobe Dillon. Those guys are workhorses for this offense, as well as a slew of receivers. And I think for Southern, the bright spot is the tight end spot. Dupree Fuller and Jermaine Minor Jr., those two guys within themselves. And we all know as offense, a tight end is a quarterback's best friend. So if they can make that game all the way, what they say, and Southern has to play 3 phases of the game. Special teams. Special teams was the reason that the loss happened at McNeese. Just fell apart. Southern has to play all 3 phases of the game. Offensively, that offensive line has to be there to make sure that they open up those run lanes for those running backs. The quarterback has to keep the ball away from that Nicholls secondary and limit those turnovers. And defense just has to continue to make the tackles, get Nicholls offense off the field, and special teams, whether it's punting down the field, make them drive the length of the field, and field goals. You got to make those. And so for me, for Southern, that's what they have to do. Is no different from any other game. You have to play really good 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, and special teams. And you definitely have to do it when you play against good programs like Nicholls State.
Absolutely. We could talk about Southern all day, but it'll certainly be interesting to see how they carry, this momentum from that win into the bye week and against Nicholls. But thank you, Perry, for your time. We truly appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. So again, thank you.
I appreciate you for having me.